welcome back. As you see here, I have lots of apples. I was recently laid off because of, the current climate in the world and the economy. And I decided the first thing I would do is go and volunteer at a food pantry. It was a great experience, and I definitely kept my mind off of myself while I was focusing on other people, which is awesome. However, they had lots of fruit left over, including apples. So I volunteered to take the apples and had no clue what I was gonna do with them. And we don't have a lot of space in the fridge right now, so we're making apple butter. Yay! I actually love apple butter, and I think I have enough apples for this. I did find a recipe. I usually use another one, but I'm gonna try to use this one because it has less ingredients. This recipe is from Texanaran Baking, and it calls for about 12 medium apples. She says 3.75 pounds of unpeeled apples. I probably have the volume of around 11 or 12, I don't know. Then a tablespoon of ground cinnamon, half a teaspoon of allspice, 1/4 teaspoon of cloves, 1/3 cup of apple juice, or 80 milliliters for all of those who do the metric system, and 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. So let's begin. The apples that I picked, I don't know what they specifically are. I wish I did. But I tried to pick the most red as possible, but then I also wanted some tartness in it. So I did pick some Granny Smiths that did have some red tint to it. First, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut these into eighths and then cubes. We're gonna de-seed it, but we're gonna keep the skins on, okay? So the way I cut is, I try to keep my hands away from the blade. I hold to the sides, and then from there I can just have them lay flat and just cut them from there. It's much easier than doing it any other way. And then try to cut them into eighths. And then from there, it's just easier. Other ones say to core them. Maybe I just make my life more difficult, but I actually don't have a corer, so I just cut the pieces out that have the, part of the seeds or the membranes that are very tough, that are not gonna cook down. That way I keep the most flesh, I keep as much flesh as I possibly can, as compared to coring it where you end up losing a lot of the flesh. And then I'm just gonna cut these in half. This will increase the surface area of when I'm cooking them down. Makes my life also a little bit easier because later on we are going to blend them, and I really don't have to worry about big pieces, so this makes life much easier. More flesh, less work later on. I'm gonna do these with all of them. Now I have 2 bowls of fruit ready to go. So now we're going to move over to the stove top. Jump time! Now we just have to throw everything into the pots. So I'm gonna put this on about medium heat for right now. Now, like I said, the recipe called for apples, the cinnamon, allspice, cloves, apple juice, and lemon juice. This is where I'm going to change the recipe a lot. I'm obviously going to throw the apples in. I don't mind if they get a little bit of caramelization while I'm working this out, as long as they don't burn. Oh yeah, that fits the whole thing. Okay. Okay, and so now I'm going to add the spices. Okay, so the recipe calls for a tablespoon of cinnamon, half teaspoon of allspice, 1/4 teaspoon of cloves. I'm not doing that. I'll do the tablespoon of cinnamon. That's a yes. And if some more falls out other than what I'm putting, that's okay. Now this is where it changes. I don't have allspice. I do have cloves. But I'm just gonna do whatever I want to do at this point. You don't have to go with what the recipe says when it comes to spices. Spices is all up to you. So we're gonna do about half a teaspoon of nutmeg, because I really like nutmeg, and it brings back the feelings of apple pie to me. And then we're going to do, I guess, we have cloves. That one called for about a half teaspoon of cloves, so we'll just do the half teaspoon of cloves. And now we're going to do, what is it? Yeah, cardamom. I like cardamom because it gives that flowery flavor. A lot of people don't like it. You don't have to add it. Like I said, this is your spice mix. Don't do this at home, kids. You'll end up mixing your spices. Not a good idea. And it calls for a 1/3 cup of apple juice. I'm not doing apple juice. It's extra sugar. I'm just going to do a 1/3 cup of water. I'm going to just do a little bit of honey. Since it's only a 1/3 cup of apple juice, we'll do about a teaspoon of honey. Okay? And then it also says to add a tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm not going to add it because the reason you use lemon juice is to stop oxidation. So when you cut an apple, it's like cutting a cell, right? And so there's certain things that happen with a cell, like cellular damage. Part of that is oxidation. That's why when you cut an apple, you see the brown. With this, we're not worried about covering up the brown. If anything, I want it a little more brown because I'm making apple butter. You know, it gives that caramelized look. The other reason you would add lemon juice is really to counteract the sweetness. I'm not using apple juice and I only put a teaspoon of honey. It has the Granny Smiths to help with the tartness anyway. So we're just gonna omit the lemon juice. So I'm just gonna give this a nice stir since it's already filled almost to the top. Nice wooden spatula, just to kind of mix a little bit. Try to get some of that cinnamon around on the other pieces and some of that honey as well. Okay, they're looking like they are all pretty much covered with some sentiment of cinnamon and spices and honey and whatnot. So now I'm just going to put the top on here. I'm just gonna leave this to go for about 30 minutes. Okay, so we're about halfway done with that 30-minute interval and it smells really good. Now we should probably mash it a little bit. I'm using a mashed potato masher. I don't know what else you call it, a masher. This just again helps with surface area. So I'm gonna put that on for another 15 minutes and hopefully it'll be ready for the next step. Okay, we are at the end of the half hour. So let's check this out. There it goes in bubbles. It looks delicious. Or it will be even more delicious when it turns into apple butter. Okay, so we're just gonna mash this down even more because now it's definitely looking like a goopy mess. So now the goal of the day is to pretty much just leave it bubbling with the lid off for about an hour, and every 15 minutes we stir it so it doesn't burn on the bottom. So yeah, an hour. Mixy, mixy, mixy. Ooh. That's really sticking already. Scrape, 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 scrape. Don't you yell at me, I am the boss. Okay, I think it is looking good. So let's take a look-see. So there it is. It is hissing like a snake. Okay, so now we are going to take it off the stove because I think it's looking pretty thick. And I'm going to blend it with an immersion blender. So you can also try putting this in the blender, but that's just very messy. Whereas I happen to have an immersion blender on hand, so I might as well just use it to blend it. Okay, let's just sweep the sides. Okay, let's have another look-see. Look at how that looks. It almost looks like a brownie batter, but it's definitely not a brownie batter. It's deliciousness, different deliciousness. Okay, I'm just gonna have a little taste though, just to see how I feel about it. Whether or not I'm gonna add any sweetness or anything else to it. It's pretty tart, so I'm just gonna add a tad bit more honey just to sweeten it up. Maybe a tablespoon? Or maybe just count pour. Yeah, just count pour. That looks about a tablespoon or two. And so now we're gonna stir this in. It's gonna be even more glossy. Because you know honey's glossy. Glossy, glossy. I'm thinking I want it a little bit thicker. So I'm gonna put it back onto the stove. This is a personal preference. If you liked the thickness that you saw beforehand, then leave it. You can put it in the refrigerator and let it go. I'm gonna leave it for longer. Just because I want it to be thick enough that when I take it, it's like butter, like real butter, and just like spear it on my bread, or cracker, or bagel, muffin, whatever. Just spear it on. I'm gonna leave that for I'm gonna go about 20 minutes. I'll leave it for 20 minutes. So it's actually been around 10 minutes. It started making ploop, ploop, ploop noises. I think it's gotten the viscosity that I wanted to have. So let's check it out. Okay, here it is. It's looking pretty good. And there it goes. It's looking, there, see? That was the little poop poop I was talking about. Another one. So yeah, it's looking the good thickness, and I don't want it to explode, so I think we're good at this point. So we're just gonna turn off the flame, and boop. And we're just gonna stir it a little bit, just so that we can let it cool a little bit. And we're gonna let that cool off before we go down to the next step. I'm so excited. It's gonna be, soon enough, it's gonna be the next step on my bread and my toast, and it's gonna be delicious. Okay, so this has now been sitting for probably about an hour, and I'm just gonna transfer it into a jar and let it sit in the fridge for longer, because who doesn't like a cold butter? Except if you like a hot butter on your toast. Then, well, you know, I need to store it somehow. Okay, let's store into the jar. This is it's probably gonna be more than that fits the jar, but you know, we'll see what happens. Okay, definitely more than what fits. I think I can probably fit another jar's worth. And I definitely have a lot more left, so you know what that means? I get to have more with bread. Here we go, we got some gluten-free bread, and I'm going to smear it on. Oh yeah, this is a definite success. It's so good! I'm so happy. Okay, so breakdown again. We put about 12 medium-ish apples. You want to stay with the red more than the green because the red gives you that sweetness as compared to the tartness of the green. Although if you want a little bit of tart like I do, throw in a couple of Granny Smiths. Now, if you want to substitute the apples, you can probably do pears, or you can do quince, which is related to the apple and the pear. However, the quince must be cooked. It is inedible raw, so it ends up working out fine in this situation. But they are supposedly a little more tart, but you just add more honey for those. Then we had about a tablespoon of cinnamon, 1/4 teaspoon of cloves, 1/2 teaspoon's worth of nutmeg. Then we threw a little bit of cardamom, probably about a 1/4 teaspoon of cardamom. Then we had a 1/3 cup of water, a teaspoon, and then probably about a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half's worth of honey later on. So I actually had control of how much sugar goes into it. And we nixed any of the lemon juice, which was a good way to go because we really didn't need it because I had so many Granny Smiths in there. So overall, it was definitely a success. It takes time, but the time is well spent because this is delicious! So thank you for joining me on this delicious adventure, and I hope you take the time to make this at home and try it out. Yay! Oh yeah, I'm definitely eating more of this.